Ah, Camelot, a myth polished by repetition, a stage on which heroes repeat their lines until even valor rings hollow and tragedy becomes routine. Since Hades was given the throne by Nyarlathotep in exchange for allegiance to Azathoth, the kingdom had decayed under his quiet dominion. No longer a seat of legend, it had become an underworld of myth, an afterlife stitched from half-remembered tales. He ruled it not with cruelty, but with the cold inevitability of forgetting. Here, knights relived quests without end. Pages rewrote their masters' names again and again. The kingdom had become not a memory, but a punishment for having once been remembered. It was always a place defined by its losses. Arthur's betrayal, Merlin's withdrawal, the knight's futile quests. But now the kingdom itself had become a tapestry fraying into nonsense, each thread of story unraveling into incoherence, each stitch of hope slowly giving way to melancholic inevitability. It was theater without audience, legend without conclusion, and somewhere in its gilded rot, the weight of nostalgia became indistinguishable from the stench of decay. Pooh Sleepnora, and Alice arrived through metaphor rather than a physical gate. Yes, that ridiculous form of transit the mortals so adore when they fancy themselves profound, stepping out beneath the ghost of a silver sky where stars hung low, dimmed by the sort of gloom only eldritch bureaucracy can engineer. I could see them, of course. I always can, but I could not follow. Azathoth's mark of entropy had claimed Camelot, and even now it pulsed faintly through its crumbling stones. Intervention from me, the librarian, would have triggered consequences no vault of memory could contain. To cross that threshold would not just break rules, it would shatter containment, and so I remained just beyond the veil, watching, because that's all I was allowed to do, and sometimes, even that is too much. Camelot rose before them like a mirage drawn by a poet on the verge of burnout. Elegant yet sinister, crowned by spirals and towers whose grace had long since decayed into architectural delusion. Flags fluttered from fractured crenellations, embroidered with legends whose threads had begun to fray into irony. A silent squire polished a broken sword beside an empty portcullis, endlessly restoring its gleam for a master who would never return. It was the sort of place where myth insisted on existing past its expiration date. Beauty strained by unseen hands, ancient walls whispering stories too sorrowful to speak aloud. And I, of course, watched, because that's what you do when a bear, a ghost, and an accidental philosopher decide to walk into a recursive legend with nothing but courage, sarcasm, and trauma, masquerading as strategy. The path twisted, then straightened, as if the land itself couldn't decide whether it still believed in direction. Shattered stone mosaics flickered underfoot. Sunbursts, swords, and stags faded into abstraction, retelling half-legends in silence. The trees here bent inward but cast no shadow, and the sky wore the color of parchment left too long near fire. They'd been walking a while, long enough for silence to become suggestion. Pooh was the first to speak.
This doesn't smell like a Camelot,
he said.
Not that I know what a Camelot should smell like, but I don't think it's this.
Alice slowed beside him.
How would you describe it then?
He gave the air another sniff, then scrunched his face.
Well, it's like someone baked joy into a pie, but forgot the sugar, and the crust is burned, and the pie's crying.
Sleepnora hovered a few feet off the ground, tilting sideways as if listening to a melody only she could hear.
It's like someone pressed flowers into a book and left the grief in between the pages.
Alice exhaled through her nose.
Hades kind of aesthetic, then.
Didn't Master Cthulhu say Nyarlathotep just gave it to him?
Pooh asked.
Like a gift.
More like a poisoned gift,
Alice corrected.
wrapped in myth and bureaucratic rot. And Hades, he doesn't rule. He archives.
Sleepnora floated slightly higher, arms crossed and frowning thoughtfully into the fog.
But why would he take it? This isn't even his genre.
Pooh looked around.
Maybe he collects discontinued kingdoms? Like Eeyore collects broken umbrellas.
Alice snorted.
Yes, but umbrellas don't loop their own tragedies.
Sleepnora spun slowly midair.
I thought Hades hated knights. Too shiny, too oathy.
He probably does.
Alice said.
Which makes it worse. This wasn't a promotion. It was a trap with nice curtains.
Yes, but isn't a Camelot supposed to,
Pooh started.
isn't it supposed to be noble, brave, round tables?
Alice raised an eyebrow.
Pooh, look at it. The towers are slouching. That one's crying moss.
Pooh squinted.
Maybe Hades thought it came with dragons.
Maybe he thought it came with audience.
Sleepnora said. That made them pause. Alice folded her arms.
So you think he took the throne for attention?
Sleepnora shrugged.
He's been in the same underworld for a very long time. Wouldn't you want to try being king of knights for a bit? Even if the knights were stitched together from bad memory?
Pooh nodded.
That's true. Everyone needs a hobby.
And Hades' hobby
Alice said.
is poorly integrated Arthurian necrotheatrics.
They walked in silence a few steps more.
Honestly,
Sleepnora said, floating upside down.
this place feels less like a kingdom and more like a resume he never submitted.
They moved forward, though none of them said who led. The towers of Camelot slouched inward like an old man listening to ghosts. Flags hung limp, still fluttering. Only the movement was wrong, like the wind had been looped from another day.
Look over there. Those knights are behaving rather strange.
Two of them stood guard at the gate. Their armor gleamed like it had been recently imagined, too polished to have known real combat. They were mirror perfect, one posed with a halberd too straight, the other holding a shield an inch too high. Their symmetry wasn't discipline, it was artifice.
They're standing like the illustrations in Rabbit's storybooks.
Alice frowned.
But they're standing all wrong. It's like they're trying but failing. Look at that knight, for example. That one's casting the wrong shadow.
Sleepnora hovered up beside them, squinting.
And that one, his boot isn't touching the ground, it's hovering.
Pooh stepped closer to one, craning his neck. The knight didn't blink, didn't shift. The armor looked Arthurian, but under the filigree faint scratches ran diagonal, intersecting over the breastplate. A symbol, faded, lambda. Pooh turned.
Alice, what does this mean?
She leaned in, peering sharply.
That's not from Camelot. That's Spartan. Bronze Age, maybe. 6th recursion down.
So,
Pooh said, rubbing his chin.
either he's very lost,
Or very miscast.
Sleepnora finished, her voice soft.
He doesn't belong here, but he thinks he does.
Alice exhaled slowly.
Narrative instability. Hades isn't replacing history. He's patching holes in the tapestry with whatever thread he can find, even if it frays.
Sleepnora's hand brushed the echo blade, which vibrated faintly like a name on the verge of being remembered. Pooh looked up at the unmoving knight.
Do you think he knows?
Pooh pondered, his ears flapping in the wind as if asking questions themselves.
That he's in the wrong story?
I'm not sure, my dear Pooh, but let's not linger any longer.
Alice replied honestly, offering confidence undercut with a hint of sad uncertainty. The wind stuttered. A knight near the gate flickered, literally, glitching like a sigil trapped between updates. For one breath, Knight's armor was a mossy green until it wasn't. An axe, steeped in sharp, noble purpose, rested expectantly in its hand. Sleepnora inched closer, playing detective.
Did you see?
I saw
Alice said tightly.
residual recursion artifact. It's the realm adjusting to our presence. It can't interact with us, though, probably.
You say that,
Sleepnora whispered.
but it felt like it wanted to test me. Also, Pooh has an upside-down letter on his breastplate now. Just like the knights.
I don't know what test it was about, but I demand Mr. Mossy Knight let you pass.
Sleepnora beamed.
That's so 100-acre woods of you.
Alice stepped forward, crossing the threshold beneath the flickering sigil. The others followed. The knights didn't move. Not even their breath betrayed them. Pooh looked back at them, then at the road ahead. And together, they kept going until they were greeted by a knight that didn't quite look like a knight. Spartan steel reshaped into the form of Arthurian legend. His armor bore the wrong century. His posture, the wrong story. Only his eyes, forgetting how to be human, still felt vaguely real, dimmed by repetition, flickering like a candle beneath a locked helmet.
Welcome, strangers, to Camelot, realm of honor and eternal quests.
Alice immediately stepped slightly out of place, breaking the expected narrative rhythm. A banner above them glitched, flickering as if struggling to decide which forgotten sigil it should display. The sky behind the knight rippled, briefly misaligned with the geometry of the towers.
Persephone warned us about this.
She said cautiously.
Back in Elysium, she said Camelot was already unraveling, already claimed. I wonder what happened to her.
Then more sharply, as if testing the thread of a trap.
Mr. Knight, can you tell us about this place?
Her voice probed gently at the edges of the knight's certainty. The knight paused, stuttering subtly, armor gleaming with unnatural clarity under the eerie twilight.
Welcome, strangers, to Camelot, realm of honor, eternal.
His words faltered, eyes flickering briefly with confusion, searching for lines long memorized yet suddenly elusive.
This isn't what you really want to say, though, is it?
Pooh offered gently, stepping forward. He tilted his head, studying the warrior's armor, not the ceremonial plate of Arthurian fable, but a weather-worn bronze cuirass marked with a faded lambda. The symbol didn't belong here. It clung to the knight like a memory misfiled, like a dream dragged from the wrong underworld.
You don't look quite right here.
He said softly.
I could be wrong, but that doesn't seem like a very Camelot kind of uniform. It's like... how should I put it? someone dreaming in the wrong story.
He glanced again at the knight who may not be a knight at all. His voice quieter now.
It must be terribly hard to always say the same thing. Don't you ever grow tired, Mr. Knight?
His question hung in the air, more powerful for its quiet sincerity than any accusation or confrontation. The knight shuddered faintly, a single tiny fracture appearing in his armor, as if Pooh's simple question had struck with gentle force. A thin fracture appeared across the insignia on his chest, barely visible but spreading. His mouth opened. There was a pause, a silence too human.
I had a son once.
His voice wasn't mechanical. It was raw, hesitant, like the sentence cost him something.
He carved a wooden horse for my shield.
The words hung there. Then, just as quickly, his expression reset. The fracture vanished.
Welcome, heroic travelers.
He boomed, posture stiffening.
Glory to the throne of Camelot.
The cheerfulness landed like a funeral drumbeat. They moved past, unsettled. Sleepnora lingered slightly. The knight's half-glimpsed recognition tugging faintly at something unspoken, like the shadow of a name she once carried. Her echo blade trembled in its sheath, the gentle vibration a sympathetic hum of loss and almost memory, a resonance of identity adrift. Pooh watched the blade hum and vibrate softly, his brows furrowing.
What's it picking up?
He asked gently. Sleepnora's gaze lingered on the knight.
Something about him.
She whispered.
He's not from here. The blade knows, but it's gone now. He stopped fighting. I don't think he'll be in pain anymore.
Alice stepped closer and placed her hand on the breastplate of the knight. It wasn't a calculated gesture. It wasn't part of a plan. Her hand moved, then halfway to the knight's gauntlet, fingers tensing like she could steady him or stop whatever was happening to him from completing. She wasn't sure why. Maybe it was the way he had hesitated. Maybe it was the voice. I had a son once, spoken like it didn't belong to him, and yet it did. Maybe it was just a reflex, a human one. But she didn't make contact. She stopped. Her hand hovered there in the air for a second too long. The knight didn't flinch. He didn't move at all. Not in a way that mattered. His posture was flawless. His armor was polished. His presence was perfect. And that's when she understood. Whatever he had once been, whoever he had been, wasn't here anymore. Sleepnora's instincts were right. There was no recognition in his eyes, no awareness, just a script, just pattern recognition and ceremonial posture stretched over the echo of a warrior who had belonged to a different war. Alice lowered her hand. The moment passed without consequence. The knight resumed his loop, repeating his welcome as if nothing had broken. But for Alice, something had.